All right. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for that confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 560. Space and technology, please hit the like button as you come in and share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a document in the description of the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in this discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. All right, let me drop the link down for everybody who wants to join. Make sure you update your Zoom client. The latest update for Zoom is 5.1. So make sure you update your Zoom client to 5.1 before joining. All right, man, let me get started, man, since we already 3 minutes behind. This is from theguardian.com. Scientists say most likely number of contactable alien civilizations is 36. New calculations come up with an estimate for worlds capable of communicating with others. There may not be little green men, but they may not arrive in a vast spaceship. But according to new calculations, there could be more than 30 intelligent civilizations in our galaxy today capable of communicating with others. Experts say the work not only refers to insights into the chances of life beyond Earth, but could shed light on our own future in places in the cosmos. I think it's extremely important in citing this because for the first time, we really have an estimate for this number of active, intelligent, communicating civilizations that we potentially could contact and find out there is other life in the universe. Something that has been a question for thousands of years and is still not answered, said Christopher Concealis, a professor of astrophysics at the University of Nottingham and a co-author of the research. In 1961, the astronomer Frank Drake proposed what became known as the Drake equation, setting out 7 factors that would need to be known to come up with an estimate for the number of intelligent civilizations out there. These factors range from the average number of stars that form each year in the galaxy through to this time span over which a civilization would be expected to be sending out detectable signals. But few of the factors are measurable. Drake equation estimates estimates have ranged from 0 to a few billion civilizations. It is more like a tool for thinking about the questions rather than something that has been actually been solved. Now, Concealis and colleagues report in the Astrophysical Journal how they refined the equation with new data and assumptions to come up with their estimates. Basically, we made the assumption that intelligent life would form on other Earth-like planets that like it has on Earth. So within a few billion years, life would automatically form as a natural part of evolution, said Concealis. The assumption, known as the astrobiological Copernican principle, is fair as everything from chemical reactions to star formation is known to occur if the conditions are right, he said. If intelligent life forms in a scientific way, not just a random way or just a very unique way, then you would expect at least this many civilizations within our galaxy, he said. He added that while it is a speculative theory, he believes alien life would have similarities between in appearance to life on Earth. We wouldn't be super shocked by seeing them, he said. So this is, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. This is interesting because, okay, last week we covered an article, it was going on Bishop Red Pill. Peace to everyone in the chat too, because I didn't get a chance to say what's up to everybody. Yeah, peace to everyone. Yeah, but the thing is, we've covered this quite a few times before, that you have these sort of bursts of radio signals coming from a distance that nobody really knows where it's coming from, but we know that it's happening every so often within a month, okay? And within a season. These large radio signals, massive radio signals is coming out like a ping from, one radio to another, or one device to another, except it's coming from the galaxy. We have no idea where it's coming from as of yet. At least they're not telling us this. Now you're talking about scientists say most likely number of contactable alien civilizations is 36. Well, somebody's out there, right? There was a show called, if I remember correctly, is what's the name of the show, man? How did I forget that? Alienation, I think it was. X-Files. And I think the motto was that, or at least the term was, there's something out there. Well, if there's something out there, it looks similar to us. What I find interesting here is that if civilization started in Africa here, right, on the continent as we know it today, Africa, then what that means is that everybody who starts off melanated. What's the probability that alien forms would not be melanated? Something to think about. Maybe they're not so alien. Maybe it's the Mzungas that are alien. Okay. We're definitely not alone. Like Black Torch says, shout out to Black Torch. You're not alone. But we talked about this many times before, that 1 in every 3 startups going forward will be a space startup. So keep that in mind, that there's a lot of opportunity in this area. We covered this about a week or so ago. We're going to cover it one more time. Titan is drifting away from Saturn 100 times faster than we thought. This is from space.com. The moon's orbit around the planet is getting farther away faster than previously predicted. Saturn's moon Titan is zooming away from its ring parent 100 times faster than scientists expected. According to a new study, Saturn's largest moon was born fairly close to the planet, but over the course of 4.5 billion years, it has migrated out to where it orbits currently, approximately 746,000 miles away from the planet. The Saturnian moon's orbit is now expanding away from Saturn at a rate 100 times faster than scientists had previously predicted. Most prior work had predicted that moons like Titan or Jupiter's moon Callisto were formed at an orbital distance similar to where we see them now. Jim Fuller, assistant professor of theoretical astrophysics at Caltech and co-author on this new study. This implies that the Saturnian moon system and potentially its rings have formed and evolved more dynamically than previously believed. Moons exert a small gravitational pull on the planets they orbit, tugging at the planet. The gravitational interaction is what causes tides in the oceans here on Earth. On our planet, friction inside of Earth from this tugging creates heat, which alters the planet's gravitational field. This gradually pushes the moon farther away from Earth, about 1.5 inches every year. Titan tugs on Saturn in a similar way, but the friction inside of Saturn is thought to be weaker than here on Earth because of the planet's gaseous composition. Previous research has suggested that the moon should be moving away from Saturn at just 0.04 inches or a centimeter, 0.1 centimeter per year. But this new work suggests that Titan is actually moving away from its planet at a whopping 4.3 inches every year. In this work, two teams of scientists worked to measure Titan's orbit over 10 years, with each team using a different technique. One team used a technique called I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'll just skip right past it. In which astronomers precisely measure this positions and movements of stars and other celestial objects to determine Titan's position in relation to those nearby objects, as seen in images taken by NASA's Cassini spacecraft. The other team used radiometry, a set of techniques by which astronomers measure electromagnetic radiation, including visible light, to calculate Cassini's velocity as it zoomed by Titan. Knowing the spacecraft's velocity allowed the researchers to measure the moon's gravitational influence on the craft. This helped the team to study and measure the moon's gravitational pull. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is really interesting that a moon of that size, I think Titan is even larger than the Earth itself. So keep that in mind. Something that's massively larger than the Earth is actually moving faster than what they anticipated. Who knows if it might speed up? You know, today it might be 4.3, 30 years from now, it could be double that, okay? This is very interesting stuff, but like I said before, you know, 1 in every 3 startups is going to be a space startup. So this is someone that, you know, an area that people can actually get into and start researching. I also wonder if Titan is habitable, at least from a robotic standpoint. Can anything be placed on there to measure what's even going on the surface? I mean, yeah, you have satellites like Cassini and whatnot going around it, but wouldn't it be great to actually put a robot on there to see what's going on? Okay. We have no idea what's going on until we actually get down to the surface. China White, good evening to you as well. Appreciate that. We have Jay on the panel as well. Welcome to the panel, Jay.
How's it going? Good evening.
Sure, man, sure.
So actually, the
Jay on the panel as well.
the European Space Station actually
Sure, man, sure.
launched a successful mission to Titan.
I think you might be having the playback in the background.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I just stopped it. Yeah, they actually the probe only lasted for a couple minutes, but they were able to get some valuable data from it.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a big mission right now. Send an octocopter to Titan. It's called Dragonfly.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have covered that one yet.
Briefly.
Yeah, that's a pretty exciting mission right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are looking forward to it. So the atmosphere there, I think, is made up of mercury.
Okay.
So yeah, it definitely wouldn't be habitable for humans.
Yeah.
But nice is that it's so thick that like it would be, you get lots of lift. That's why a quadcopter would be feasible.
Is this on Titan or on Saturn?
Less energy than a quadcopter would use on Earth.
Are you speaking about Titan or are you speaking about Saturn?
Titan.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so actually they say it actually rained, like the water vapor cycle on Earth is actually a mercury cycle on Titan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it rains mercury. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. What do you propose is going to come from the research off of that?
I'm not sure. I think they just want to examine the atmosphere. You know, I'm not actually a scientist. I'm an engineer, right? So
right.
I work on power systems. So they tell us we want to do this. The scientific side, I know very little about, like the physics and the planetary exploration side.
Mm-hmm.
I can send a link. It would be about Dragonfly. It's still in the proposal stage.
While you do that, let me get to this next article from foxnews.com. Astronauts Falcon 9 rocket was totally different ride than a space shuttle. The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket was a pure flying machine compared to the space shuttle, according to the astronauts who rode it into space. Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken piloted the first manned flight of the Falcon 9 on May 30th. Each astronaut had previously been on 2 space shuttle missions, and they spoke of their surprise at how comparatively smooth the SpaceX launch was. From the time the engines lit, the first 2.5 minutes to staging was about like we expected, except you can never simulate the G's. So as the G's built, you couldn't certainly feel those. Hurley told Spaceflight Now, when I thought it was really neat was how sensitive we were to be throttling of the Merlin engines. That was really neat. You can definitely sense that we broke Mach 1. So I guess they're basically saying that, SpaceX launch was more like a Cadillac ride than a jalopy of the previous missions they rode before, which doesn't surprise me because of the technology input that's been put into all of this. So all right, let me jump to the item that Jay put in the chat. All right, this is Dragonfly that's going to Titan. I know we covered this before, but this is the actual site itself. So what is this thing made out of, Jay? Is it copper or something?
So I don't even want to go into that. So
I'm just looking at the image right here because it's sparkling, right?
So usually for spacecraft, they use special materials that are oppositely charged to the environment, so things don't stick onto them. Like dust,
Yeah.
for example, if you have like a camera or something or a lens, you don't want like random dust particles.
Right.
So they usually have things on the body to charge a spacecraft
Okay.
in a certain way to keep things from attracting to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a concept. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay.
But typically spacecraft are made up like aluminum because it's very light.
Right.
And it provides like it has good radiation shielding property.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't know that this was the concept here, but just looking at it just looked really interesting. So
Yeah, this one's very exciting. A lot of people are excited about this one.
all right.
This is like Voyager level.
All right, let me move on to the next item on the docket. This is from the South China Morning Post. China must prioritize innovation to avoid being strangled by the US in the next few years, top researcher says. What happened to the article? Stupid. China should prioritize innovation and building a higher level economy in the next 5-year plan to create new drivers of growth, lift the nation's core competitiveness, and more importantly, avoid being strangled by Washington, a top Chinese government economist has recommended. Zhang Xiaojing, deputy head of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, Institute of Economics, said Beijing needs to focus inwardly given the country's more challenging development environment from the hostile attitude from across the Pacific, the global recession caused by the coronavirus pandemic, to major domestic economic risk. Innovation is the key ingredient in lifting the nation's core competitiveness. It will facilitate the change of growth drivers in the new normal period and also help to counter technological decoupling, said Zhang. Current US-China trade and technology disputes keep parameters for longer-term planning, and policymakers are Washington, kicking away the latter, which China used to become the world's second largest economy, according to Zhang. As the innovation in the 14th 5-year plan period between 2021 and 2025 will be challenged by such U.S. efforts, China needs to rely more on itself, wrote Zhang, who is a leading expert on macroeconomic leverage, a key risk parameter tracked by policymakers in a 18,000-word article published in the latest issue of state-sponsored Economic Perspective magazine. China's 5-year plan sets out its social and economic policies and political goals, with the next plan focusing on 2021 to 2025. Zhang is part of a growing number of Beijing's policy advisors warning about an increasingly uncertain outlook for China's relations with the rest of the world, as well as rising domestic headaches, all of which will have to be addressed in the country's next 5-year plan. The proposals and suggestions from CAS, one of China's top economic think tanks, will be sent to the office of Vice Premier Liu He, President Xi Jinping's top economic advisor, who will finalize a draft of the new 5-year plan that will be submitted for discussion later this year. The final document will be unveiled at the National People's Congress session next spring. Internationally, we face a new industrial revolution, deglobalization, populism, the dilemma of global governance, and continuing trade frictions between China and the United States, wrote Zhang, who is also a new member of the Chinese Economist 50 Forum, a group of reform-minded Chinese economists and officials. Domestically, the economic slowdown, coupled with the accumulation of cyclical, institutional, and structural factors, pose major risks for the development in the 2021 to 2025 period. China has no intention of challenging the United States nor replacing it. On the other hand, the United States won't be able to influence China nor halt its development, he said in the article. The two countries, from a long-term global perspective, have a far larger chance than ever to cooperate, Zhang added. In practice, one should grant the other greater freedom in industrial policies, technological systems, and social standards, and allow the use of specific policies, including both tariff and non-tariff ones, to protect their choices, he wrote. Like a majority of Chinese economists and policy advisors, Zhang said China cannot totally rely on Washington, which could be especially true in the run-up for the presidential election in November, when political campaigns can feature widespread criticism of China. The fundamental solution is to promote indigenous innovation, maintain the integrity of the industrial and value chains, and try the best prevent from, this is poorly written, I think this is translated, prevent from being excluded by the United States from the global value chain, Zhang wrote in the article. So I'd be interested in seeing how far China can go without relying on US technology or Western technology for that matter, especially US technology. Android has been instrumental in their phones actually being developed, and then you factor in Qualcomm and Intel and AMD. I don't know what they're going to do without those companies in their intellectual property. Okay, be very interesting to see how this all turns out for them, though. Now you're talking about creating proprietary technology that the U.S. may end up having to steal, for that matter. I wouldn't be surprised if the Africans start stealing that stuff. I mean, it would be more difficult for them to steal from the West because there's so many other restrictions. But what happens when China develops something that's so immensely better than anything the West has to offer? At some point, people are going to try to copy that too. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's surprising how far back they are in terms of chip technology. I mean, when I think of chips or chip manufacturers I use on a daily basis, like I don't know one Chinese manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And even you know how they publish the breakdowns of the iPhones whenever a new one comes out? There's a guy who does it. I forgot his name. Like, he opens it up and shows the bill of materials.
Right.
Like, no Chinese chips, no microprocessors from China, no FPGAs. Very interesting. All from Europe and the United States.
Right.
And of course, South Korea and Japan.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of that stuff is designed here and is manufactured there, right? So it's not like they're relying on China to actually supply them with any sort of technologies. It's more about the advanced manufacturing process that they needed.
Yep.
All right, this is from electrek.co. Say goodbye, the only made in America electric scooter company closes. I thought this was a Complex's company, but I guess it's not. After temporarily shutting down during the COVID-19 pandemic, Gen Z is now shuttering its operations for good. We covered this company before when they were actually still active, producing vehicles. So very interesting. Gen Z might not have been the first company to spring to mind when Americans think about seated electric scooters or electric bicycles, but the Mahindra-owned company was one of the few with an actual US factory that built vehicles in the US. Now we are learning from a recent announcement by its parent company that Gen Z will be shutting down its operations. The company is in the process of liquidating Gen Z's assets after deciding to shutter a number of its unprofitable subsidiaries. Gen Z will reportedly be completely dissolved in the next 6 months. Mahindra has said that Gen Z's intellectual property will be integrated into other Mahindra products and subsidiaries. It is not yet clear what will happen to its Detroit factory seen below. I didn't even get a chance to even buy one of these. Then again, it's not that nothing that much innovative coming from it that would make it better than some of the other competition, in my opinion. Um, all right, this is from legit.nigeria or NG. Nigerian man who built solar-powered tricycle in 21 days. Let me expand this on. Anthony Okafor is one of the many Nigerians who are not letting the challenges in the country deter them from pursuing their passion. I don't know who wrote this name. A graduate of mechanical production engineering, Okafor, who studied at the Akawai, I can't even pronounce that, Namadi University, Aka, wants to be known as the Elon Musk of Africa. His latest innovation is a solar-powered tricycle that he unveiled recently at the Ebony State. In a recent interview with Vanguard, Okafor disclosed that it took about 3 weeks to complete the solar-powered tricycle, popularly called Kiki. According to him, this was due to the limited working tools and machines. This is, click on this real quick.
On February 1, 2020, the Lagos State ban on Okada and Keke came into full effect. And as expected, Lagosians have begun to feel the effects of this ban. Many have even started trekking as a result of the ban because the Okadas and Keke we all depended on to move from point A to point B have suddenly disappeared from the streets. Now, but these Kekes and Okadas are not supposed to disappear totally from the road. These and 3 other facts are what we'll be discussing in this video. Number 1, what is the real reason for the Okada and Keke ban? It all boils down to safety. Dr. Frederick Oladeinde, the Lagos State Commissioner for Transport, revealed that in the places where Okadas and Keke have been banned, they are simply not safe and they also contribute a lot to traffic. Number 2, are they totally banned from Lagos? The answer to this is simply no. Kekes and Okadas are simply restricted in certain parts of Lagos, but they have been totally banned from all major expressways and bridges in the state. Some of the local government areas where their movements have been restricted include Apapa, Lagos Mainland, Surulere, Etiosa, Lagos Island, and Ikeja. Number 3, what are the alternatives? Many have wondered what alternatives the Lagos State government have provided following this ban. Well, Dr. Oladeinde, in a press conference, also revealed that more buses will be added to the routes where these Okadas and Keke have been banned from. In fact, a total of 65 new buses from the Lagos State bus services have been added to the current fleet. All this is aimed at making sure Lagosians do not feel the pains of this ban. All right, guys, a little bit of good news here. Now, you guys remember the lady we interviewed sometime in the past who talked about the fact that she doesn't want to sell her body to make a living, or she doesn't want to do any other illegal thing just to make sure she can feed herself and her family. Now, we found out her name is Sandra, and if you remember, Sandra says she used to make 20,000 naira daily while riding Okada. Now, so a good Samaritan who was impressed with what he saw and what he heard in the video decided to come to Sandra's aid. How did he do that? He dashed her a car. Like, he literally gave her a whole car and said she should use it to start her own. She should make sure she starts using it for the ride hailing business. You understand? That means she's going to be taking passengers from here to other places. He decided after seeing her video that he was going to help her now. So Sandra has been upgraded from an Okada rider to a car owner who can decide to start join one of these popular ride hailing services. Now, so what's the moral lesson of this story, guys? All you need to do now is anytime you see the legit TV microphone, anywhere you see us.
All right, this is interesting, man. The lack of building materials and other resources that would be needed to actually develop this cycle at full production capacity is actually pretty good coming from them. And so if you're handy, you know, you could turn a wrench and move a screwdriver, you should be able to start doing these type of things on your own now with all this, with all these schematics and stuff released in open source. Although they didn't actually show the trike itself. I'm not sure why the pictures weren't available. The small pictures weren't enough to actually blow up. So all I'm saying here is that where there's a will, there's a way. And it seems like Africans are always finding a way to do something, man. All right, this is from the IEEE. Used EV batteries could power tomorrow's solar farms. I think we covered this about a week or so ago, but we covered this about a week or so ago. As the number of electric vehicles on the world's roads multiplies, a variety of used EV batteries will inevitably come into the marketplace. This, says a team of MIT researchers, could provide a golden opportunity for solar energy, grid-scale renewable energy storage. This application, they find, can run efficiently on batteries that aren't quite up to snuff for your Tesla or your Chevy Bolt. There are now 2 million solar energy installations in the United States alone. The number, according to Wood Mackenzie and the Solar Energy Industries Association, is expected to grow to 3 million next year and to 4 million by 2023. Yet, such installations can only generate electrons when the sun is shining, which means plenty of solar power will be available during daytime hours with a dot for power on cloudy days or at night. In other words, as solar power expands, the need for energy storage only ramps up, says Ian Matthews, Mary Curie researcher, a research fellow formerly at MIT. I'm sorry if you can hear the fireworks going off in the background. This has been going on for 6 weeks now. As you increase the penetration of the solar energy on the grid, you need to start to do something to deal with the fact that solar energy produces a lot during the middle of the day, Matthew said. But often you want to meet loads later in the day. And obviously lithium ion batteries are getting a lot of attention in this area and are being deployed quite widely. But lithium ion batteries are also expensive. And so long as the rare minerals like cobalt are needed to make them, they're also dependent on limited and dwindling natural resource. So yeah, this was bound to happen, right? All these vehicles coming off the road, your Priuses and Nissan Leafs and stuff like that, those cars coming off the road have these batteries in them. You're gonna have to repurpose them. You can't just throw them away. You know, so it has this material issue. And so they still have some decency left of life left in them. Why not use them to your advantage? I figure at some point, in the uninterruptible power supply segment, the UPSs for computers, I figure at some point those those sort of batteries will be repurposed for that reason as well. There's a lot that you can do with these used batteries. Jay, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mentioned, I think when you talked about this last time, I was actually a friend and I came up with a plan to do exactly what this article says. So the interesting thing is, like, for example, a company like Tesla, for them, lithium-ion batteries are bad when they can only store 80% of their capacity. So if they lose 20% of their capacity, they're bad. But a solar farm, they might still be good up to 50% capacity.
Can they be conditioned?
I'm sorry?
Can they be conditioned? Can they be,
No, a lithium-ion battery, you can't do anything. Once it loses capacity, that's it.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can recycle the cathode material, maybe. But no, once they're done, once they lose capacity, they're a hazard to use at that point.
Okay.
At this point, I'm sure in the future, they'll come up with a way to recycle them.
Okay.
Yeah. But the issue comes in is, I think I mentioned this before, screening.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, like, say you get a battery pack from Tesla. You have to screen every single cell and then match them. Match cells with similar capacities.
Now, is there a process of going about doing that, or?
Yeah, so basically you just go through a charge-discharge cycle. So you would charge the battery up. You can do this manually if you have like a power supply.
Mm-hmm.
You just charge the battery up, and then you let it sit there for a day. If the cell voltage is, say, less than 3.2 volts or 3.1 volts, then you know it's a bad battery because it just discharged itself. It just self-discharged, so it's a bad battery.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to match batteries, with similar properties.
Is that under load or just stand still?
No, just stand still.
Okay.
Just charge it up, leave it. And you can also do some more advanced tests, like measure the impedance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this group of scientists would probably do something like this, but like anybody in the group could just take up, because these batteries are standard, like it's 18650.
Right.
Almost every lithium ion battery is 18650. Like you open up your drill, your laptop, it's just a standard size. So you could actually take an old laptop battery pack, pull all the batteries out, measure them with a voltmeter, and save the good ones and make your own battery pack.
Okay. Something to look forward to. All right, this is from Forbes.com. This data scientist is offering virtual coding camps for students nationwide to narrow STEM's education gap. When the coronavirus forced schools nationwide to shut down indefinitely, some 115,000 low-income students in Chicago, one of the country's most segregated cities, were sent home without devices to use during quarantine. 115,000. It's a hurdle that can make the desire to learn both inside and outside the classroom harder and certainly much less appealing. And while Chicago Public Schools is actively distributing more than 100,000 devices and free meals to these students, access to the internet is another lingering issue. Data scientist Beyond Kaplan, a Baltimore native and current Chicago resident, wants to keep many of those students from low-income Chicago households engaged and stimulated with an initiative that's giving them access to free computer science resources. Her long-term goal, create a pipeline that will break the STEM glass ceiling. Her recent launch of Coder Heroes and its Coder Camp program has two parts. Students nationwide can sign up for computer science learning in lieu of canceled in-person camps, a boon at a time when coronavirus is threatening summer activities. A portion of each virtual Coder Camp tuition is the donated is then donated back to her Code Your Dreams after school program. Sorry, which provides middle and high school students in low-income Chicago communities with free computer science courses, as well as access to the laptops, Wi-Fi, and Android devices they need for coding and app creation. When Kaplan first launched Code Your Dreams back in 2018, it was self-funded. Coder Camp, which took off earlier this year, is helping her fund programs for more students in schools in Chicago's underserved neighborhoods. The digital divide has not been as clear as it is today. Without schooling being transitioned online, says Kaplan. COVID-19 not only made that, COVID-19 not only made that divide so clear, but also the importance of trying to bridge that divide and solve the problem. It's unlikely that 10-year-old Khalid Washington, one of Kaplan's students who lives on the west side of Chicago, would have been exposed to coding had it not been for the Code Your Dreams after school program. The result of this participation is an app that connects people with organizations that can donate to help children in need in Africa, which can be accessed through MIT's App Inventor Gallery and downloaded onto an Android. Washington is also hoping to revamp the app to feature COVID-19's relief efforts to donate to. I mean, imagine this young little, what a handsome little young man. Once upon a time, I was looking like that. I like helping people, says Washington. It's sad to know that people are suffering. I can change the app by adding on more charities to also try and get us one step closer to getting out of this coronavirus. 6-year-old Yushan Wang, a student from another Code Your Dreams after school program on Chicago's South Side, completed her wellness app right before shelter-in-place mandates hit the US, but she's pleased it has become even more necessary in light of heightened stress and emotions that have emerged from the global crisis. Wang's app, which is available via Scratch, a programming service developed by the MIT Media Lab, begins with an animation of characters. Clicking on Happy the Penguin, for example, begins a series of breathing exercises. Another character, Leah, named after a friend of Wang's in the coding program, known for her positive personality, provides motivational messages. The app recently earned Wang third place at the Chicago Student Innovation Convention. I hope people feel calm from my app, says Wang. COVID-19 is here and people have to be more calm. This can really help. A new goal of Kaplan's is to give the students access to virtual courses too, and not just after school programs that have been put on pause. Earlier this month, with the help of 3 sponsors, an environmental engineer, a financial tech investor, and a NASA computer scientist, she launched a scholarship program that grants students in underrepresented communities free tuition to an upcoming virtual coder camp. So far, Kaplan has doled out 4 scholarships, including one for a student who typically attends the free Google and Apple camps that were canceled this year. Kaplan's looking to award a total of 35 scholarships in amounts ranging from $800 to $2,100. But if more people reach out to help sponsor, she'll be able to increase the number. I find it's interesting that these sort of programs are coming up from outside the school system and not within the school system itself. Why are people, why are the school systems so poor at, engaging their own students? It doesn't make any sense. All this money that they spend on schooling, or at least from what they do spend, none of this seems to be coming out of the budget. And the thing is, it doesn't really cost that much. Really weird. American public school system is very weird. Misappropriation of funds, not really engaging the students at that level. I don't get it sometimes.
Yeah, it's shocking. I don't understand it either.
Yeah.
For example, where I lived at high school, like they found like half the kids were on a third grade reading level.
Yeah.
But you cross the bridge, you go to Arlington. I went to a graduation there recently for high school in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are studying Python. They have Turkish classes. They have 3D printers, and I'm like, what? These are both public schools. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. They're talking about defunding the police, for whatever money they can. You would think that they would turn that money into some of these programs. I'm not hearing that conversation being had though, from what I'm hearing. So. All right, next item on the docket is from AJC.com. Atlanta fast becoming a mecca for African Americans in tech. I've been down there, so I can tell you this is true. The workspace on the 30th floor of 101 Marietta Street looks the same as many other offices devoted to the technology field and the millennials who dominate it. The expansive room features trendy wood accents. Visitors check in on iPads. Cozy couches are grouped together for open, laid-back team meetings, along with white tile walls and station. White tile walls are stationed with complimentary coffee, soft drinks, and cucumber-infused water. But what sets this room in downtown Atlanta apart isn't the way it's arranged, it's the people who filled it. African Americans make up almost half of the young people conversing or pecking away on laptops at the WeWork location. The West Coast might be the epicenter for a nation's tech community, but Atlanta is steadily becoming the top spot for Black technology workers, from whom more and more entrepreneurs are emerging, industry observers say. 4 times more Black people work in the sector here than in San Francisco, according to 2016 Brookings Institute study. The city is exploding with Black computer programmers, information security analysts, and database administrators, as well as math scientists and statisticians, said Mark Murrow, a senior fellow at Brookings. And many are using skills learned on the job or in tech incubators to graduate to the next level, becoming creators of the next must-have app or indispensable technology. What we're hoping to create here is the LeBron James of tech that everyone can see themselves in, said Travis Noonley, who with twin brother Troy teaches startup strategies and offers critical financial support. In interviews with dozens of African-American techies, several factors were cited for Atlanta's accession, including the city's resources for developing minority talent, such as tech programs at Morehouse College and Spelman College, as well as tech incubators at corporations. Many also pointed to Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, and the city's other Fortune 500 companies that have track records of financially supporting Black entrepreneurs. And there's Atlanta's cheaper cost of living, a draw for technology workers residing in more expensive areas of the country. But most importantly, those interviewed said the community views African-American contributions as central to Atlanta's economic success. The city has long appealed to Black trailblazers in other fields, from Jermaine Dupri in music to Tyler Perry in film to Herman J. Russell in construction. Despite the gravitational pull, there are challenges for Black tech entrepreneurs. Since 2000, Georgia startups have raised billions in angel funding and venture capital, about $1.15 billion alone last year. However, Black-owned or co-founded startups have pulled in only 300 million of that investment, said Rodney Sampson, chairman and the chief executive officer of Opportunity Hub, which focuses specifically on diversity and inclusion in the industry. That doesn't mean that work being done in Atlanta isn't resonating with Black America. Like the app that helps Black women find hairstylists, or technology that can be used to measure water contamination, or facial recognition algorithms that are better at identifying people of color. Atlanta is truly a hotspot for diverse entrepreneurs to build scalable tech startups, especially if the brand is focused on African American consumers, said Kanubi, the founder and CEO of Urban Geeks, a technology industry blog. Often the projects African American entrepreneurs are drawn to aren't valued in Silicon Valley. Most of what comes out of the Bay Area reflects the solutions to problems that exist for white Americans, said Jacoby Marwaping, a Georgia State University's associate professor in the Computer Information Systems Department. But the world is not as homogenous as as that community, he said. If you think about it globally, how much of the world looks like what Silicon Valley looks like, he said. It's not representative of the world, yet the technology they are building in its design is being very much informed by the people they come in contact with. And while Atlanta's Black tech entrepreneurs are not household names like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, the city is home to a number of stars in the tech world, such as Samson, Paul Judge, Tristan Walker, Jewel Burks Solomon, and the Noonley twins. Don Levant, who developed the Aquagenuity water monitoring tool in response to the water contamination crisis in Flint, Michigan, said Atlanta could become synonymous with Black tech with some branding. Just like images of hip hop with Outkast and T.I. and Lil Jon went all over the world, we need to do the same thing with Paul Judges and Tristan Walkers, she said. Like anyone trying to open a business, Black Atlantans in the tech field who decided to become entrepreneurs have to overcome a challenge raising capital. The talent is here, the ideas are here, the people willing to do the work are here. Atlanta is on fire. The money ain't here, said L.A. Campbell, a Black tech entrepreneur who failed to secure financing for an app that would help consumers match wines to their palates. More often than not, funding from friends and family, the first source of revenue for many startups, is non-existent for young Black companies because of a lack of generational wealth among African American families. Opportunity Hub's Sampson said. Instead of investing, parents and friends of Black tech entrepreneurs tried to steer their loved ones to traditional work paths, such as jobs at tech companies, he added. You and I may not have family and friends to go and get the first $25,000, $50,000, or $100,000, Sampson said. We can't even get started unless there is an outside support, corporate support, or public support. To be sure, some have found that outside support, Sampson said. Judge, founder of security technology firm Pindrop and Wi-Fi company Luma, raised about $144 million in capital between 2010 and 2019, Sampson said. Andrew Ryan, founder of management software Member Suite, pulled in $23 million during the period. Sean Wilkinson, founder of cloud storage company Storage, raised $33 million, Sampson said. Atlanta has about 20 Black angel investors or venture capital operators. Expanding that group is critical if there's nothing to be support for entrepreneurs working on technology specific to communities of color. Groups white investors may not understand, Sampson said. Sig Mosley, founder of Mosley Ventures and known as the godfather of angel investing, told the online tech news site Atlanta Inno that he plans to step in and help, joining Zane Ventures Fund in its efforts to beef up funding. Zane Ventures was created in 2018 by a businesswoman and former Atlanta Journal Constitution employee, Sheila Neves Birney. Invest Atlanta, the city's economic development arm, is also trying to do its part to provide support. Elosia Clementic, president and CEO of the agency, said last month it has launched low interest loans for entrepreneurs who sometimes have to dig into their own pockets to get their companies off the ground. After grants, the next best money is my money, she said. It's a loan at 3% interest, no payment for 6 months. Atlanta isn't the only city where African Americans are playing an increasing role in tech. Leaders and observers of the industry said. Chicago and Washington, D.C., for instance, are diversifying their tech communities too. About 17% of Washington, D.C.'s tech community and 8% of Chicago's is Black. In Atlanta, it's about 25%, according to Brookings. Pretty interesting numbers. Atlanta has risen because of the Black tech infrastructure is further along, Black tech leaders said. There are minority tech programs at Morehouse University and Spelman College. Hermie J. Russell and Co., one of the city's biggest Black-owned construction firms, recently launched a Center for Innovation to help grow the city's tech talent. Incubators, a place where startups go to get help developing their products. At Coca-Cola, Southern Company and Home Depot also have played a role in increasing the number of African-American innovators. And there are numerous minority meetups focused on tech business, such as the Gathering Spot, a private club that allows Black business entrepreneurs to share ideas. There is diversity in the Bay Area and in California, but the question is, do you have that sense of community that you have here? Said Jason Gums, a regional senior vice president for Comcast who moved from San Francisco to Atlanta last October. Comcast has a tech accelerator called The Farm near its Atlanta headquarters at Truth Park in Cobb County. I would say that as someone who has been here for 120 days, there is, to me, a greater sense of community here. Like others who are still trying to build their businesses or create the next must-have app, many Black techies have been forced to leave the Bay Area because of inflated housing prices. I moved from Silicon Valley to Atlanta, and a big reason for that was the lower cost of living, Jewel Burks Solomon said. Solomon founded a parts replacement software company in Atlanta a year after moving here in 2013. She sold the company to Amazon in 2016 for an undisclosed sum. Last month, she was tapped to lead Google for startups in the US, a new division at the search giant that supports tech businesses in underrepresented communities. The new position will be based in Atlanta. Joey Womack, the new labs manager at WeWork, said he's amazed at how much the needle has moved in the past decade. It started when some in the Black tech community began meeting up to exchange ideas, calling their group Founders Therapy, he said. Founders is an industry term for developers. We got together over a few drinks and kind of vented, he said. A few years later, more and more people came into the group, and then Opportunity Hub opened in 2013, and that gave us a place to come together. Nowadays, as a result of the growth of our startup ecosystem, Atlanta can stand in its own right as a tech scene. It doesn't have to rely upon information from other cities to be validated, said Monique Mills, who works with startup focus on retail technology for Advanced Technology Development Center Incubator at Georgia Tech. Natalie Cephas agreed. Cephas, tech lead on artificial intelligence for Amazon, said the city's Black tech workforce has been demonstrating its skills both at the corporate level and among startups for the past decade. Now she works out of Atlanta instead of Seattle, which once would have been unthinkable. The thing about Atlanta is that we have solid data points to point to. She said some people didn't know because they hadn't opened their eyes. Yeah, I've been to Atlanta around this time when they were actually starting to pop, and it was really, really early in its infancy. But reading this article makes me think that Atlanta could rival it could rival Silicon Valley if the funding is there. Okay. Part of the reason, and the article mentions this, part of this reason is because Black people don't have generational wealth, so they don't have access to the same capital. And so you don't get the same even playing field. Okay. A lot of discrimination in funding. We covered this over the weekend, even about Boston, where startups, the city's a majority minority city, but the startup funding actually goes to white males more often than not at 70%. This is a problem. I don't know if Jay has anything you want to add to that. All right. And so how do you fix this problem is going to be the question, right? How do you fix this problem for Black people getting access to funding? Well, if you defund the police and start adding a lot of that money into the coffers for the texting for Black people in particular, this makes a lot more sense now. Okay. Divestment of funding of the police departments in these areas and into a community tech trust actually makes a lot more sense. Okay, so that's how you fix this problem. The other issue here is that people are spending money out of their pocket. I recommend that people save up a year's salary first to put down into their startup. Okay. You're not going to get, because when you go apply for funding, okay, Series A, Series B, angel investment, they're going to ask, how much did you put into this? Okay. If you say I put 100,000 into this, they're probably going to be willing to match it. Okay. That's how this works. And sweat equity is the key here. You can't just, everybody thinks that their startup is going to turn billions of dollars immediately, or that they're going to be driving a Benz or a Porsche or something like that the next day or the next week or the next month or whatever it is. You're not going to be balling until you start turning profit. Okay. Facebook, YouTube did not turn profit for 10 years. Okay. And these are supposed to be, social media tech companies that, turn billions of dollars. They had not turned profit. Not until recently, the last few years. So the last presidential cycle is when they started turning profit. So make sure you save up a year of your salary and tuck that away and put that somewhere that's going to allow it to grow. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, this article, I find it interesting when they say that most of what comes out of the Bay Area reflects the solutions to problems that exist for white Americans. What are these unique problems that only white people have? I don't understand this.
Say that again.
Like, well, what are these unique problems that only white techies can solve? I don't understand this part of the article.
I think what they're saying is that the perspective that's put out there, the way white people look at things, and I think we covered this over the weekend, the way white people look at tech is not the same way that Black people are looking at it, right? Black people looking to solve a problem, whereas white people looking to sell a product. But the product is always used as a stopgap measure to a solution to something, right? So it's always short term. It's never really long term. That's what I'm interpreting from it. And that's my understanding of what the differences are between that. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I've seen based on what the article is saying. I think what happens with white tech-led companies is that, let's say the iPhone, for example. The iPhone is a premium product, okay? That thing sells for $1,000. If we're looking at the Black community's income per capita, most Black people really could never afford an iPhone. So what they do is they put it on credit. But how do you create a device that actually is sufficient based on their needs, but gives similar performance? You understand what I'm saying? So Black people look at it from one way, whereas white people look at it from a different way. That's all I can interpret from it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but the way it's written, it seems like because it says some problems that exist for white Americans. Like they mentioned the Hair Act, but I mean, white people get their hair done too. It's just strange to me, but
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the last article, man. I think what's happening here in the tech sector is that Black people have been largely shut out from it. And so how do you engage that, right? I think Atlanta has done a great job at creating their own Silicon Valley. They have a lot of infrastructure available, like the article is talking about. So I was down there not too long ago, and they're right. They have invested a lot into it. And so I think for a lot of cities, especially those who are underserved, I've talked about this before. You have public parks, you have public libraries, you have other public institutions. A lot of money gets pumped into these sort of areas. A playground can cost anywhere between $500,000 to a few millions of dollars. Okay, one playground here costs $11 million. It does not get utilized. Who wrote off on that? Who signed off on that park should be built in the first place? It's called a city manager who's the fiduciary for funding of these projects and these services. Okay, these people are unelected. Okay, they can sit in power for 20, 30 years, and you would never know it. And you can't vote them out. They have to get fired. Who's going to fire them? The mayor has to fire them. 9 times out of 10, the mayor's not going to do that. Okay. And if you do fire them, you're just going to rehire their friend who's been close buddies with them, who has the same mentality, and the cycle repeats. Basketball courts, football fields, things that Black people really don't need overall, are being funded with your tax dollars. I think you would get a better return on investment if you took that money from those basketball courts and playgrounds and football fields and put it into a community trust that could actually fund, that could actually turn into seed funding for a lot of those, Black tech startups. That's the quickest and best solution I can come up with. The defunding of the police is another topic. Divestment from policing into more community trust systems that can actually fund more Black tech startups and things of that nature, incubators and accelerators. That's how you get things moving. And then you won't have to worry about Black people digging in their pockets, scrunging for change that they don't have to fund a startup that may or may not work. Jay, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I think some kind of social engineering is needed.
Yeah.
To get tech, to make tech more appealing to kids, because I notice even with middle class Black people,
mm-hmm.
I don't know, like we're not drawn as much to tech. Like even sometimes I talk to like teenagers around here in my neighborhood, and I ask them what they're gonna do in college, this and that. I don't know. It seems like everyone's drawn to liberal arts for some reason.
Well, because we don't have.
I say, what about math, science, technology? And they say, oh, well, the math is hard, this and that. So I'm not sure why. But most of my friends that I went to college with are Africans, right? Nigerians, Ghanaian. For some reason, all of them are trained from birth to be doctors. Like, how do we create that mentality?
You have to create a cultural incubator, man. That's the only way I can really think of it, because it's not so much about Black culture, but it's the poison that gets put into the culture itself. And so, because like the article that we read before about Chicago, with the data science thing, that the code camp that the girl had built, it seems to work just fine, even in South Side of Chicago. So with that being said, if that's going to be the case, you would have to, pull those people in those kids in at a very early age. You're talking about, at the preschool, Head Start. You would have to start from Head Start to kindergarten and so on and so forth. So you would have to start at the very early development stages in order to cultivate that. Because once they get past 12, 13, 14, then they become, wayward, and it's almost a wrap at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying there's like a negative culture necessarily, but I'll give you an example. Like, I'm Jamaican, right?
Yep.
I noticed that for us, kind of like things like literature, speaking skills, like, are pushed more than math, technology, and science. Yeah. It's kind of like how Asians push their kids into STEM.
Yep.
We push our kids into the liberal arts. I'm not sure why exactly.
We're disconnected from that level of industrialization. We're completely disconnected from it. So, the fail-safe choice is to put them into liberal arts. Now, if we were surrounded, with Silicon Valley sort of startups and tech centers and stuff like that, then you can probably get a better perspective. But the problem is that we're Black communities are disconnected from those environments or those institutions. And so that's why I've said before, you have to drop those institutions into those neighborhoods, and they have to have an overshadowing presence there. That means they have to be designed in a way that is in your face, and there's nothing you can do about it other than to either you put your head in the sand, or you have to actually go inside these facilities. If in Boston, we have the NERD Center, which is the New England Research and Development Center for Microsoft. In your face, the whole building is in your face. You can't avoid it. Okay, Google is right next door to it, literally 100 feet away from it. Facebook is literally 100 feet away from it. It's in your face, and so none of these institutions are in Black communities. They're in white areas of business and habitat. And so you go home and you don't see that. The culture is completely disconnected from it. My perspective is to drop this big ass building that's 10 to 15 stories in these areas and make it and design it in a way that there is no way for them to avoid it. People go to an Apple store, right, for the culture, right? It's the culture. They're willing to travel to this store to buy a product that is 9 times out of 10 out of their price range, but they'll find a way to afford it because they want that experience. They want the cultural experience of being in this retail environment. You have to capture that same sort of presence in the community itself. Just putting up a brick building doesn't really solve anything. It has to be designed in a way that it engages people. And unfortunately, no one has come up with a solution as of yet. I think Atlanta has done the closest thing to it, but even that can't be replicated because I think Atlanta's population, I think their Black population is something like 50, 60% or something like that. It's massive in comparison to where we are. So to answer your question, how do you do it? That's a brick and mortar issue. That's definitely a brick and mortar issue. Now, how do you pay for it? That's another question. The library has a massive budget. They have a massive budget, and you would have to come up with your own sort of way to leverage the public funding of libraries and other public park spaces, right? Public park spaces can actually be leveraged for that as well. There's ways to finagle the money into there, but there are a lot of people who are going to push back and say, we don't like the idea of spending our money on this, our tax dollars on this. This is bullshit. That's the pushback I got last year, that there's no reason why a park should cost $11 million and no one's using it, and no one even bats an eye at it. And yet you got, other communities like Silicon Valley, where money is continuously pumped by the billions, and no one would ever object to, money not being spent there. No one would ever object to that. But in the Black communities, there's this idea that you need more food programs, you need more, welfare subsidies in ways that, keeps people in poverty. But the way that you actually get people out of the poverty, they don't want to actually have a conversation about that. It's amazing some of the pushback that I've received.
Yep, and some of this stuff isn't even expensive. I mean,
yeah.
I was handing out these knockoff Arduinos. They're like $8 each. Kids, you can give kids a Raspberry Pi and a little LCD screen, and a keyboard. $50.
Yeah. Yeah. Nate in the chat says, I have no problems with parts. I do have a problem with them costing millions of dollars. Does it really cost that much to pour concrete and put up basketball goalposts? Yeah and no. The problem is the labor. Labor cost is extremely is an extreme part of the budget, and so it's always going to cost money. It's always going to be expensive because whoever is manufacturing this stuff knows that the government has to pay for it, and so they can charge an arm and a leg for it. I thought it would be cheap too, but it's not. A playground can cost $500,000 easy. Who comes up with this with these sort of with these sort of figures? I don't know. I don't know why they why anybody would sign off on something like this without cross shopping it, but they kind of just accept it for what it is. And I'm pretty sure that whoever they're buying it from has some form of relation to the fiduciary councils that that are signing off on this. Okay, it wouldn't surprise me at all. They know somebody's cousin, somebody's uncle, or something like that is involved in this and keeping them in business. Actually, they found this out last year. One of these state police officers or something like that was connected with one of these other businesses, one of these other business owners or something to that effect. I forget what exactly the story was, but it was a police officer that was connected with some other people in the state, a city council person who was connected as well. They were all making a lot of money off of taxpayers on some of these projects. Okay, they were all related and whatnot. It's really corrupt, man. And there's an incentive to keep Black people in poverty, man. People are racist. This is who they are. I've always pushed for the idea that the Black community should have an ICT council, a technology council. That way they can oversee a lot of these projects that are going in and actually get the right things on board, because the people that are making these decisions don't even look like us. At least to my knowledge, most of them don't look like us.
Actually, I don't know, in some of these big cities, I mean, you look at remember that Atlanta school scandal?
School?
There was a big school scandal in Atlanta.
Okay.
There was some mismanagement, and they were lying about the test score so they can get the No Child Left Behind money.
Yep.
And I mean, the officials were all Black. And some of the nonsense that carries on in DC is also in schools run by Black officials. So I don't know why. I think some of these people don't push tech because they don't have a tech background themselves.
But even still, you still have coaches, right? I mean, an IT coach or a lobbyist or something like that. Somebody from CompTIA. CompTIA has a lot of lobbyists. That's why they stay in business. I'm not sure why this isn't being pushed.
What is CompTIA?
CompTIA is one of the certification, the major certifications organizations for IT certifications. Okay, so A plus, Network plus, that's CompTIA. They have a very large presence within the federal government. That's why they stay in business. For us, we don't have an equivalency to that, to respond to that.
Maybe NSBE or SHIP to an extent.
NSBE is more of an organization for organizing Black professionals, but not so much about cultivating, your tax dollars and stuff like that, and how to better manage, from an industrialization standpoint. They don't really look at things like that.
Yeah, so I was actually in NSBE in high school, and I agree with you. If you weren't already inclined to technology, you would have never found it.
Right. In my opinion, I think NSBE should be doing more. They seem to shy away from that. I understand that it may go against the charter's standings and whatnot and their principles. So,
well, I mean, creating more Black engineers should be the main principle.
Yeah. The PCI is supposed to be for that, though. The pre-college initiative, right? The K through 12. I think that's what that's for.
What is that, a national program, or is that from NSBE?
It's from NSBE.
Okay.
Yeah. So it cultivates children from kindergarten to 12th grade into STEM. But you would have had to have been a member in order to know about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. But DE Raptor in the chat says construction is a manner by which money is stolen from municipalities in the US. The other is retirement, like police departments have. Yeah, this is true. Police officers retiring at 45 years old and collecting. So, and they get their salary all the way until the day that they die. Amazing. Istiwa says, Mike, with what ATL has done so far, can cities with Black populations over plus 45%, can that carry over? I think that's dependent upon who's driving it. For example, Detroit was run by Black people, but they did not have the same sort of experience that Atlanta had, right? Atlanta being a Black, led city, and Detroit being a Black-led city, they got different results. Same thing in DC, different results, right? And so I think it depends on who's driving it. I mean, you have Black leadership in Chicago right now, and the results are dismal. I don't know. I don't know if I would ever want those people in my city at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the same thing on a national level. I mean, look at Rwanda and Uganda. Different drivers.
Yes, absolutely. It's a good point. Very good point. DE Raptor says, if you ask an African-American parent about these organizations you are referencing, 99% of them would not be interested in having their children affiliated. But see, that becomes a part of the public schooling issue, right? Public schools should not be, so laxed in this perspective, because if the whole thing is that we need to get more Black people into tech, well, you have to start somewhere. It doesn't make any sense that they're talking about all this diversity and inclusion, but then they don't actually cultivate the diversity and inclusion that they need to actually have the diversity and inclusion numbers they're looking for. It doesn't make any sense. I think there's a desire to keep Black people in poverty. This is like the starving kids in Africa programs, Sally Struthers used to have in the 80s. if you just send $5 here, you can help a child find a meal. Why don't we help them actually build the environment up so that they wouldn't be starving, right? It frustrates the crap out of me when I hear these sort of perspectives, from people on the inside. They're like, well, yeah, we want more diversity and inclusion, but you have no real game plan to cultivate these people into that. Just giving you more money isn't going to solve anything. I think divesting from some of these other institutions, the more corrupt ones, would actually solve a lot of these problems. I mean, you're talking about an MRAP, okay, a mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle that costs anywhere between $250 million to $1 billion is being spent in these cities. And there's 18,000 police departments. How do you explain this? Right, this is just nuts. So I think that, divested from the 1033 program, from these police departments, and putting it into fourth industrialized incubators in predominantly Black neighborhoods would make a heck of a lot more sense. The incubators or the tech centers should be as massive as, as some of these football stadiums, or whatever the case is, the basketball stadiums that you see being built. I think that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
By the way, I don't think anybody or much people are telling young Black kids that they might be broke studying liberal arts. I
think it should be banned. I think
because I just don't think they know that they're going to be making like 30,000, where if they had done STEM, they could start out making six figures. I don't think anyone's telling them.
Well, I think if you want to run for Black Lives Matters or some other of these nefarious organizations, right? These nefarious movements, you can find a job in there. You can make a lot of money, writing books and speeches and public appearances. That makes a lot of money nowadays, Jay.
I mean, that's like the chances of being the few that gets a nice book deal is like, getting signed to an NBA team.
That may be true. That may be true, but now they're going online, right? They're going into these podcasts and they're out there with their unks on, and they're talking about how oppressed they are. If you can super chat me, we appreciate that, right? You send me a cash out, we appreciate that. That starts to become a lucrative business, man. We're trying to raise money for this new pro-Black school. And if you can just send us, we have a target of $700,000. If we could just reach that by, November, that would be great.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what's going on, man. They just spent $1 billion on this Raiders stadium that's state of the art. What the fuck is this? Let me see. Check my screen real quick and then we'll close out. They just spent $1 billion on this stadium that is state of the art. And I'm not saying you have to do the same thing in a Black area. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the amount of money that gets spent on these sort of, these sort of projects is indicative of what's floating through here, and that can actually solve a lot of these issues. State-of-the-art stadium. It looks amazing. If you can capture something like this in a fraction of the size in a Black neighborhood, you can change things overnight. Literally overnight, because it's in your face. You just have to be in it. That's what malls did. Malls attracted people for that very reason. People went there for the socialization aspect and the shopping. The same thing would happen in tech. You would have to build a facility that attracts people to socialize in ways that they actually become more productive. You look at Apple's new campus. It's designed like a spaceship. That there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Okay. A lot of thought that goes into that. Any closing thoughts, Jay?
Nope.
All right. Let me read these last comments. Jay Green says the city of Arlington, Texas are paying for 3 stadiums right now, and there's no public transportation. Waste of tax money. Yeah, that happens. That's the stuff that I'm talking about. Not well thought out. Somebody made a pretty profit off it, and you as the taxpayer and the resident, you're left there with your shrugging your shoulders like, what the fuck? Nate actually made a comment. He says, we got parents out here paying PT, funding AAU teams to ensure that the future of their kids for whatever sport, that same energy put into tech would work for Black kids. You're right about that. You are right about that, man. Everybody's so worried about defunding the police. Well, we can't defund the police. The hell are you talking about, man? Some of these police budgets are $500 million. Yeah, you can take 20% from the budget and put that into tech hubs. What's wrong with that? Oh man, the crime rate's gonna go up. You assume that because they're Black, they're criminal, man. That's that same racist thinking. These are Black people thinking like this on here. Yeah, D. Raptor makes a point. He says nobody makes money off of African American men who are not in jail. Yeah, Black male, recidivism is a commodity. We need them to go into jail. We need to arrest them. We need to stop and frisk them. We need to find drugs on them. We need to do something. We need to put them into the system. Yeah, this is what goes on. This is what goes on.
Yeah, I'm praying to God an African country becomes a technological powerhouse. Hopefully in my lifetime.
Say it again?
No, I'm saying I hope within my lifetime I can see an African country become a technological powerhouse.
I think those days
Nigeria could be that country.
Yeah, I think those days are coming. Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia at some point will, probably in the next 5 years. Rwanda is already close to that. Give them a few years. I think with COVID, there's been a lot of slowdown. I talked to somebody this morning about that.
With native IP, because even China hasn't reached that level yet. Fully industrialized, producing its own ICs.
Yeah, I think
South Africa is the only country I think that actually manufactures silicon devices.
Yeah, because they have infrastructure to do it. But what happens when you don't have the infrastructure? They need energy. So that's the main thing. That's why I said Rwanda, because they're extracting gas out of the lake.
Oh, so I've been to that lake, Lake Kivu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I heard there were some issues with safety with extracting the methane. Because it's one of those lakes, I forgot what they're called. They could kill like hundreds of thousands of people, like almost instantaneously. Like the methane would leak out.
Yeah.
It would kill like everyone around the lake. So they have to be very careful. But yeah, that's very promising.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have a lot of water resources.
Yeah.
The Nile runs through Rwanda.
Yeah, I think close to it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why I said Rwanda, in the next few years, because if they can stabilize the energy coming out of that lake, they could actually drive power through the country. Not to say that they don't have infrastructure now. It's not on par. It's not sufficient for production use. You can't have production facilities shutting down in the middle of the day because there's a load bearing going on. That's not the business. So I think in a few years, I think 2025, we'll have a better perspective on where everybody is continent wise and in the Caribbean. I think the Caribbean, in the West Indies, I think that you'll see a lot more coding coming out of the West Indies than you will see manufacturing. And so, because they're so, they're too small of a state to, speaking of the whole entire Caribbean, they're too small of a state to actually manufacture anything. And so tourism is their main thing. And
well, yeah, I mean, countries like Trinidad and Barbados, I mean, have pretty decent manufacturing sectors. Puerto Rico, with medical supplies. So I think they could specialize if they wanted to.
yeah, but they're no Japan, right? They're nothing. They're not even in the same.
Yeah, no, but they could be like Singapore. Like, I mean, Singapore
Yeah.
manufactures semiconductors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do those things have to be protected from the hurricanes and natural disasters that will eventually plague the island, right? So it has to be built in a way that it's going to be sufficient. Somebody has to be willing to spend the money on that. But let me answer some of these questions. Dave Tao asked a question. What's the difference between information systems and computer science? Computer science focuses on the architectural aspect of information of information technology itself, and so the coding aspects and all that stuff, it really goes down. It's really granular, and it's not necessary to actually get into IT. Whereas information systems really focusing on the business side of enterprise information technology. And so you don't need to know all the granularization of computer science to really be involved in that aspect of enterprise information technology. Information systems focus on the business aspect, business application aspect of it. And so if you're trying to get into IT, information systems is the way to go. You don't go to computer science. It's not necessary. Nate asked a question. Yes, it's to you as well, Jay. Says, how is Botswana and Rwanda? I've been told they have progressed considerably. They have.
Yeah, I mean, Botswana is a high middle income country.
Yeah.
I mean, Botswana is like on the level of like Poland and countries like that. Yeah, their thing is on a different level.
Yeah.
But they have a very small population and a large country.
Yeah.
And lots of minerals, so they can afford a nice lifestyle.
Yeah, I would put Botswana probably closer to maybe Rhode Island in terms of like development.
Where did you say?
I'm saying Botswana.
Where did you compare it to? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, Rhode Island.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I would say it's probably closer to that of Rhode Island. If you've ever been to Providence or know about Providence, it's probably closer to that. It's not as although Providence is only an hour away from New York. It's nowhere near what New York is, but I would say that Botswana is probably closer to that than it is to New York in terms of development.
Yeah, I mean, Botswana and Mauritius, they go back and forth between the most prosperous, well, the highest GDP per capita in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing quite well.
Right.
But Botswana, I mean, they're a homogeneous country.
Yeah.
So that they weren't plagued by some of the ethnic issues.
They were a protectorate of the British and not exactly a colony.
Yeah, and their first Karetse Kama, their first president, was very amenable to the British.
Right.
So he didn't have a lot of the issues that some of the other, like he wasn't really like. Remember, Botswana didn't even like denounce apartheid in South Africa. they just played. That's why, sometimes, well, a different subject, but they played the game the right way, and now they're prosperous.
Yeah.
And now they can do whatever they want. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really respect that country.
Yeah, they made a lot of good decisions from the 1970s going forward.
Yeah. They also have a smartphone company, but I think it's not like a smartphone. It's on the lower end.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it's yeah, I can't remember right now. My brain's farting on it, but they've done a lot of good things in terms of like the development, governance and actual mining and manufacturing. So, but the president of Botswana was at the World Economic Forum in February, and he talked about developing the country. 7 of the 10 fastest growing markets right now on the continent for 2020, pre-COVID. And so I think his country was one of them. And so I say all that to say that to answer the question in the chat, the development of Botswana is something to be paying attention to. It's on my list of areas to plant my feet in. If Rwanda, ever falls apart, that's my alternative. So.
Yeah, I find it interesting whenever they talk about, Africa's poor, this and that, they always, for some reason, forget about Botswana.
Yeah.
Never mentioned. Don't know why.
Yeah, Botswana is a diamond in the rough, so to speak. So it doesn't have a look that up. Make sure I get the word right. Yeah, it's landlocked, so it doesn't have access to the ocean in the way that Namibia does and South Africa does. But you're not that far away. You're only about 30 minutes away from South Africa, from Joburg, from a flight perspective. You're not going to be up in the sky that long. So.
Yep.
Yeah, so my perspective is that pay attention to those two, Rwanda and Botswana.
I would also throw in Gabon.
Oh yeah.
They've been doing some good stuff lately. It seems like they're getting serious. I mean, I know the French countries we kind of forget about them, I guess, because they're kind of outside our sphere of influence, or maybe there's a language barrier or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're doing some great stuff over there.
Okay. All right, man. Let me get out of here because I don't see any more comments. But Jay, thank you for coming through, man, and blessing me with that some of your knowledge. And shalom to everyone else.